Hey y'all, welcome back to Simple Grace-Filled Home. My name is Angie and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to talk about biscuits. I am not going to give you it's not about the biscuit recipe, so this is not about it itself. I will give you the recipe that I use, but this is really about what makes our biscuits crispy and yet soft and flaky and very delicious, right? Because biscuits are not always made equal. We love biscuits. We eat lots of biscuits here, especially my husband. He loves biscuits, and so this is something we make often. And so we're going to get right into it, okay? I have a little one playing around on the floor. He's trying to sweep for me. It's so sweet. But he fell. Okay, right into biscuits. Here we go. First, you want to use, obviously, flour. Typically speaking, you use a whole, an all-purpose flour. We use an unbleached, whole white wheat organic bread flour. We buy this from Azure Standard. I buy it in the 50-pound bags because we go through a lot of flour. I do grind quite a bit of our own, I do mill quite a bit of our own wheat berries and stuff like that for different things, but for biscuits, I always use an all-purpose or this bread flour. So 2 cups of bread flour or all-purpose flour. And then we're going to use 1 tablespoon of baking powder. And then we're going to use, so we'll actually stick things back here as we use them because we're going to need the space. And then we're going to use just half a teaspoon of sugar. You can use a different sugar substitute. I just use the smallest amount. And 1 teaspoon of salt. This is a pink Himalayan salt. Alright, and we're actually going to be difficult. Take a whisk and just whisk this up. Make sure it's just, mixed together, incorporated with each other. That's all. I don't like to use several dishes, so I'm happy this is only 1 bowl. And then, tip number 1. We're going to use very, very cold butter. This butter was in the freezer, and all I did was take it, put it in the fridge, just so that it was softened enough to cut up. But it still will be difficult. It will be difficult. This is half a cup, so 1 stick of butter. And you do typically use an organic butter. Today, this is actually, and this is Finlandia. I think that's a European-style grass-fed butter, something like that. I think it's European. Anyways, we're going to use very cold butter, and then we're going to use, this is a pastry blender, pastry knife. I don't know. I can't remember what it's called. But I use one of these. And I just cut it in. You can cut this up first if you want to, but I really try my best to not touch the butter too much because, well, you don't want it to be melting, right? You want your butter to be cold for a reason because that's what's going to give your biscuits that flakiness. That's one of the things it's going to give it. I should say one. It's not the only. I actually need a new pastry cutter because I've used this so much, and because I use such cold butter, I've bent the little pieces of it. But we're still good with this. I need to get a new one, but in the meantime, this is totally fine. I just keep bending the pieces back in place. So we're going to just blend this up, cutting the butter in with this until I'm not too particular. Some people feel it should be some people feel it should be like pea size or very crumbly. I just make sure it looks cut up and there's no huge chunks. And I will show you in a moment what this looks like. So it's nothing crazy. And this is how it looks. So it's all pretty much like that. Alright, so butter's incorporated. Tip number 2, use cold butter. I'm sorry, use cold milk. Again, we just want it to be cold. And just like most bread making, how much liquid you need really depends on where you live. Depending on your humidity and things like that. So what I do is I'm going to do 1 cup in here. But I'm not going to pour my 1 cup. I'm going to pour about half. Well, that's not, that's about 3/4. I'm just going to take a spatula. Again, trying to not touch it too much until I have to fold it out. Roll it out, fold it out. I'm going to mix it around. I don't want my biscuit dough to be sopping wet. I really just want it to come together. I don't want it to be like crazy crumbly either. I just want it to come together. I just want it to hold together nicely without having to squish it or nothing like that. So it should just be dough. And you can see the dough's not quite together. We still have all this loose stuff. Even if I push it down, it's still going to be some loose stuff. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a tiny bit more. And that looks like it's going to be good because it's all rolling up. Alright, so see, now we can just push all this together with our hands. So that was probably just a tiny bit over 3/4 a cup. Alright, so I got a ball of dough. It's a little bit stickier than I like actually, but we're going to put flour on the countertops. That's really, it's going to be okay. As long as it's a tiny bit, not too crazy. Okay, so we're going to take okay. Don't touch. Okay, tip number, what's that? 1, 2, 3. Well, that should have what I said. Try not to handle your dough too much with the butter. So you want it to stay as cold as possible. Tip number 4, which is my husband would say is the most important tip, is actually 4 and 5. We'll say 4 and 5, but 4 is not as important, I guess. I prefer cast iron. I feel like they cook biscuits the best. And because I use coconut oil and I rub my pan with coconut oil, And this helps my biscuits to be nice and crispy on the outside. And that's like my husband's favorite. He loves them crispy on the outside and soft on the inside. So 4 is cast iron, which you don't have to do. The 5 is coconut oil. So I just take coconut oil, just put this in my hands, and I just rub it in my pan. Set it back here. Let's take a little bit of, well, I did that, flour, and sprinkle it on the counter, right? I'm sure we're all familiar with this. Now, this is another tip I should have maybe started with, but these are obviously not going to be in perfect order, is to preheat your oven. And I don't mean preheat your oven like right before. I mean give your oven some time after it's rise to the temperature to sit at that temperature for, I say, at minimum 10 minutes. Because you want it to consistently be that temperature instead of just throwing your pan in there. It just barely got there. So there's something about a nice hot stove that works. I preheat my oven. It's set at 420. It's already ready. It's been ready for a while. And so now we're going to roll these biscuits, right? The next tip is don't just roll your biscuits out, but take them and fold it. And fold it and fold it. Since you've got that cold butter in there, this is going to give you that flakiness. My dough is a little stickier than I prefer, but it's okay. So tip 1, if I can remember what I said, cold butter. Tip 2, cold milk. Tip 3, use your hands as little as possible until it's time to roll it out or fold it out. That's what I do both. Tip 4, right? Cast iron. Tip 5, coconut oil lined in whatever you're going to cook your biscuits in. Tip 6, making sure your oven is heated properly, not just as soon as it's ready to, at the temperature, you just pop it in. And then tip 7 is a biscuit cutter. I, for years, did not understand the importance of a biscuit cutter, but you want something with a thin edge, and so almost sharp, but I mean, it's not going to cut me, but something that's going to cut directly down, and it's not going to squish the dough closed. And so that's why biscuit cutters are, it's very important. If you want a nice biscuit that's risen properly and is going to puff up right. And I'm going to show you the difference. So you can even see, I'm actually going to leave, we'll do this. So this is one that's been cut with a biscuit cutter, okay? And in a moment we'll look at one that looks like one that's been cut with, you know, a jar, which I don't recommend. That's what I used to do. I don't recommend using a jar. Biscuit cutters is definitely the way to go. So we'll grab a jar. So throw our biscuits in the pan that's been lined with coconut oil. I probably make these, I don't know, 1/2 inch thick. I'm not sure if I can tell you exactly. Take the remaining dough, right? The same thing, I just keep folding it over. Fold it over. Fold it over. Fold it over. And just roll it out a little bit. To my desired thickness. You might like thicker biscuits. I don't know. Let's do this first. So. here's a jar. And here's the biscuit cutter. So biscuit cutter and jar, making sure you know. Okay, now when we're looking, this is the biscuit cutter. And you can see the layers. You can see there's a layer. This is at least 2 layers. And then we're looking at this. You just see the dough. It almost looks like it has a line in the middle. There's no defined looking layers, just a line in the middle. This one you can tell. Well, maybe I can tell. Maybe I'm playing with biscuits too long. Anyhow, and you can see how this is even squished more farther down on the sides from the pressure. And this is pretty even all around for the most part, except for me playing with it. And this one's not quite like that. So we're actually going to put this one right here. Okay, so we'll know. Actually, just probably set it right in the middle. I don't know if I have enough biscuits to fill up my pan. Probably after it's cooked, we can look at the difference. Let's finish our biscuits. Biscuit. My daughter, you know, she's little, so for some reason, as little children do, she likes tiny biscuits. So we're going to make one more regular biscuit. And then one with this little tiny biscuit. Don't waste your dough. This isn't going to be the perfect biscuit, but you know what? It's still a biscuit. This is a tiny one for my tulip. And there we have our biscuits. We're going to stick these in the oven for 20 minutes. I'm going to set a timer. Now to recap. Okay. Biscuits are easy, but there are some important tips and tricks to make them delectable. I don't know if it's the right word you want to use, but super yummy. And again, tip number 1, cold butter. Tip number 2, cold milk. Tip number 3, messy with the dough as little as possible because your hands are so warm, you're going to melt that butter faster, right? Tip number 4, cast iron if it's available to you. Tip number 6, whatever you're cooking your biscuits in, coating it with some coconut oil. Tip number 7, making sure your oven's preheated properly before you stick your biscuits in. Not waiting for it to beep and then being like, oh, it's ready. Give it a few more minutes to make sure it's nice and hot and holding that temperature. And tip number, that was 7. Tip number, 8, folding your biscuits. While you're making them. So when you roll them out, fold them a couple times, fold and roll it a little bit more. And then using, tip number 9, using a biscuit cutter, because that's going to not pinch down on the sides. It's going to rise very nicely. And I think that's all my biscuit tips. It seems like an awfully lot. I've been making biscuits for a long time, and I've definitely made biscuits that were nothing special. But I make these biscuits all the time, and these are our favorite by far. I do say when you use a quality product, it makes your biscuits nicer. For example, if you're using a yummy butter, right? It's going to make a difference in your biscuits. Something that's super creamy. It doesn't have to, I actually use unsalted butter. That's almost the only thing I buy. I add salt to whatever I need to. And also even your milk. Using a really nice creamy milk as opposed to a skim milk or a 1% milk, or you can use those things, but it's just not going to give you a lot of fat content, and it's going to change the texture of your biscuit. So they're such a simple thing to make, but we make it so complicated. I probably made it super complicated, but I swear it's not. It's just now so natural to me to make biscuits. It's time to pull the biscuits out. Let's see what happens. Hey, no, sir. Thank you. Okay. These biscuits actually took me 23 minutes, but because I was waiting for them to brown a little bit on top. And so here are, oh, look, see that one's so flaky, it pulled right apart. Here are the biscuits that we've made. You probably should be using a spatula, huh? Because they're super flaky, so they want to just come apart as I pick them up, which is a good thing. Okay, we're taking all these edge ones out because these are definitely all ones that we used the biscuit cutter with. Okay. And here's the 3 left in the middle. And this one is the biscuit cutter. Still flaky. Oh, that's hot though. We're going to show you. I'm put them right here actually. And this one is the one I used with the cup. And this is the one I made by hand. I mean, it's like a blob, right? That's what it looks like, a blob. So this is what we're going to look at. So you see this is the biscuit cutter one. And this is the one from the cup. And see how, look, it just pulls apart. It's got layers. See, it pulls, there's another layer. Like, it just pulls apart so nice. It's the layers. Okay, and this one, excuse me, my hand's in the way. There's no layers. It's not like you have to just pull it apart. It's gonna break apart. And the top. So it's not flaky in the same way. You can't, I'm just trying to pull. If there will be a layer, but that's just pulling it apart. It's not pulling apart right. Anyways, this you can tell, layers. Layers. And this one is just not as many layers, not the same way. See, it just pulls in chunks instead. It'll still be delicious. It will. But look, see, it definitely doesn't look like this biscuit now, does it? Well, it definitely doesn't now. So this is a beautiful crispy biscuit on the outside, and we'll even, and on the bottom, nice and crispy. That's what we'll do. And it's nice and soft on the inside. I'm just in the way. Let's do this. Look at that. That's so beautiful. And if we listen, I don't know if you heard that, but it was pretty crispy, which is my husband's favorite part. Now that I've demolished my biscuits, I'm actually going to eat some. We're going to take a beautiful biscuit right here. We're going to eat it my favorite way, as I've made a mess on my plate now. And we are going to add some nice butter. Uh-oh, somebody's mad. You know what it is? You want the biscuit. And honey. And there course, like for me, no better way to eat a biscuit. For my husband, he prefer either butter alone or jam alone on his. All right, so now you know my biscuit making tips. I hope you've all enjoyed, as now my little one's tearing apart my cabinet. It's very nice of him. Well, thank you for joining me back here at Simple Graceful Home talking about biscuits today. I appreciate it. I enjoy the kitchen. It's where I spend most of my time, in the kitchen. Yeah, most of my time is in the kitchen. Will there be cooking for my family, cooking for our neighbors, cooking for company, or anybody else? We love to eat, and I love to cook. All right, I'll see y'all next time. Thank you for stopping by at Simple Graceful Home. You saying hello again? Huh? Do you say hello? London's enjoying the biscuits. I just want to remind you, if you enjoy this content, if you could please share it or like, that would be amazing. And also, if you would subscribe to my channel, that definitely helps me. And you know what? It's a great motivator. When people are interested in what you're putting out, well, that's always nice, right? Yes. All right. We thank you again for stopping by. Bye.